Hello and welcome. Arab women today play a pivotal role in economic and social development. Policy upgrades across the Middle East mean women are increasingly recognized for their roles as leaders and agents of change. The region has witnessed a steady evolution of improved gender equality reforms that not only encourage women to participate in the workforce, but to take leadership positions and to become entrepreneurs. Today, Forbes Middle East brings together a panel of renowned female leaders from Oman and the broader GCC who will share their thoughts on how the role of women has transitioned to empower a modern economy. I'm so pleased to be joined by Lujena Mohsen Darwish, chairperson of Mohsen Haider Darwish, ITICS, and Oman State Council member. Sophie Smith, founder and CEO at Nabta Health. Her Highness Al-Sayyida Basma Al-Said, mental health clinical counselor and founder at Whispers of Serenity Clinic. Arij Mohsen Darwish, chairperson at Mohsen Haider Darwish, Accra. Huda Al-Lawati, founder and CEO at Alif Capital. Elisa Friha, founder and CEO at Womena. Pleasure to have you. Now, I'd like to start by asking Ms. Lujena, you've been a part of Oman's Women's Association, Arab International Women's Forum, and the Business Women Committee. Could you elaborate on your journey towards the empowerment of women in Oman to help them become independent and to achieve their goals?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on this panel. It's an honor to be amongst a few very leading ladies in the region. I would like to answer this question, Ramina, by first quoting a very famous quote from His Majesty late Sultan Qaboos, where he described the Omani women as the second wing to the nation, which will take it to beyond the horizons. So by quoting him, I mean, we are just highlighting here, I'm just highlighting that the Omani women has been privileged and been given all the attention from the government from early 70s. Just to talk a bit about myself, I'm a graduate from the Sultan Qaboos University. I graduated in the year 1991. I come from one of the leading business houses in Oman, where we were three sisters, no male brother. So it was a challenge for us, I mean, to prove ourselves and to take the legacy of our father forward. So being the elder sister, I felt I need to do something to myself. I need to be a role model to my siblings and to as well give something in return to my nation, which has given me a lot. So my journey started as in 91. I started in the Sultan Qaboos University as a teacher assistant. That also I got it because I was one of the best students who graduated in that year. And I worked as a teacher assistant for almost 3 years. Once I felt I'm ready to move to my father's business, I went to him one day and I said that I think I need to now leave this academic career and maybe join the business. I started there, I joined the business. The good thing about my father, late father, may he so rest in peace, is that he did not give me in the high post from the beginning. I mean, I just started as a normal staff in the company. I had a very small desk. I didn't even have a secretary. And, you know, we grew like this step by step. I always wanted to do something different in life. So when I reached the age of 30, one day I saw an announcement of people who wanted to nominate themselves for the Shura Council. And here I am. I just called the person there in the governor's office and I say, I want to nominate myself. So I start my Shura journey from there. I got at early 90s where the awareness of women nominating themselves or standing for elections was not that great in Oman. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, instead of one term, I got elected for 2 terms. I represented my Muscat area, my original, I should say, where I come from. And then from there, I was also nominated by decree to the Oman Chamber of Commerce. That was also one thing I'm very proud of. From there, in 2015, I was also nominated by decree. I was nominated to be member of the State Council, which is the upper house of Oman. I'm serving my second term now. And after that, in 2020, I stood for elections to be the first Omani woman who actually won a seat in the Oman Football Association. So that's my journey in brief.
Sultan Qaboos said women in Oman will take the country beyond the horizons, and you had the support of your father, Allah yarhamuna. You met both of their expectations, so congratulations on all of your success. Miss Sophie, would you elaborate on how Nabta Health is really empowering women to identify and manage health and wellness that's accessible, affordable, and really personalized?
Yes, so I think we've done a couple of things over the last 5 years since we've been around. The first is to try and set a bar really in terms of innovating in women's health, what that means. When we look at the health tech ecosystem and the companies that innovate in the space, in general, they innovate across 3 levels. So the very first level is education, and then access, and then outcomes. And if you're innovating in the outcome space, there's an assumption around education and access as well. But what you're really trying to do is change the way that healthcare is provided. And so we built a hybrid and holistic health model focused on changing the outcomes for women here in the region. Today, we've engaged with over 25 million women across the region. We recently published a book out of the region on our kind of pioneering model of hybrid healthcare that had contributions from some of the key thought leaders around the world. And we're trying to, build an ecosystem here that is leading not just in the MENA region in femtech, so that's women's health technologies, but also in the world, which brings me on, I think, to the second area in which we have contributed, which is to really put femtech on the map here in MENA. When we founded the company back in 2017, we were the first femtech company in the Arab world. I remember the first pitch competition we won. I think we only won because we surprised everybody. People were like, what on earth is this company doing? I've never even heard of femtech. Then we've seen over the years a lot more interest in the sector. Organon with Flat 6 Labs made a really big statement last year when they set up the region's first femtech accelerator. The first 10 companies in the first cohort have just been announced. They, in fact, announced the winners earlier this week. We've seen a lot more companies innovating in the space, doing everything from novel period products to different sort of education platforms. We've got Noor Imam of Mother Being in Egypt, who is bringing interest and awareness around reproductive health. So I think we've helped to build a little bit of a movement in this space to make people realize that women's health is something worth investing in.
Education, access, and outcomes certainly is a holistic and very well-rounded approach. Ms. Basma, as the founder of the first specialized mental health and well-being clinic of its kind in Oman, how are you making mental health care accessible for women, children, and men in the Middle East?
I think with the topic of mental health, as everybody would always say, it's a taboo topic all around the world, not only in the Middle East or in the MENA region. And I think for a well-balanced society to be able to do a lot and to give in a healthy way, they need for their mental health to be intact, as we say. We always say everybody goes through bumps. And the person that tells you they haven't gone through anything to do with depression or anxiety or anything on that platform, then there's something really wrong with them. I always say that. But giving people the accessibility of information for mental health in a creative way, in a way that is easy to understand in any language, with any background, education, and any gender is something very, very important. The clinic and the awareness campaign is not only for the Sultanate of Oman, it's for Oman and internationally as well. And doing that was a big message for me to send out to the world that Oman really believes that mental health is very important. And when it comes to women, there's a word that we use a lot, and we use empowering women. I kind of think that's a word I don't use much, because I believe personally that women are born empowered already. We do a lot of things and God has given us so much power, but within the journey, I think we lose that because of things that happen within our life. But a woman with proper mental stability can give a lot and can also bring up children that will therefore also bring up a society that will be balanced in mental health. So mental health needs to be taught differently. It needs to be approached totally differently, not the way that we've been approaching it all these years. It has to be some kind of creativity and storytelling to make it more real.
Removing taboos to mental health is definitely a huge challenge. Now, Ms. Arish, what efforts need to be put forth to empower and to elevate Omani women entrepreneurs so they can build their entrepreneurial capabilities and skills, really, that will help accelerate growth in the women-led entrepreneurial ecosystem in the Sultanate?
So for me, I think the efforts which should be kept by like ladies, which we are today, I mean, which my sister there, say the Basma, I mean, ladies which are in the society, which are holding leader positions, we should all of us put effort by training this youth. Because, you know, in our youth, there are so many skilled and creative youth, we need to upgrade the skills. And the skills can be upgraded by having workshops, sharing our experience, because as you agree, or you can see that all of us, we went through so many things which, you know, groomed our experience. And today where we are, we went through lots. And again, I agree with Sayyida Basma, it's not an easy task. We all went through lots to reach what we are today. So our experience and our success can be taught to them, share them our experience, have workshop with them. They should know that, you know, something they should remove. I think this is the most important thing that we should encourage our youth is fear, or our society is the fear, because everything when you started, there should be a challenge, there should be, I mean, a problem. But, you know, as you go on, that fear becomes less because it becomes a routine thing. So I feel the efforts which should be done by us is, you know, training them, sharing our experience with them, encourage them, removing the challenges which they are facing so that they see everything is easy and they can do it. So, and other thing which we think, I think we should do it, I think it's not that we just, it's not about when we have the workshops, is that, you know, we just speak. We can give them examples where, you know, real true stories through women who went through a lot, but today they are in, you know, high posts. So I feel more of workshops, more being side by side this type of women.
So challenges actually strengthen these women along the way. And Ms. Huda, what are your thoughts on how proactive approaches can really help women tackle inequalities and discriminations to foster a culture of diversity and equity and inclusion in the workplace?
Thank you, and thanks for having me here. So, look, I think proactive approaches are, I'll start with my experience with it, which was until about, I would say, mid-level in my career, I would get invited to things that are women-oriented, and I was like, well, I don't want to engage too much in this because I think people make an issue of a non-issue. Of course, as I got more senior in positions, I realized that it's definitely not a non-issue. But at the same time, I also participated in a few educational forums where we would go and teach younger girls, 11th graders, 12th graders, about business, about entrepreneurship and different elements of corporate and startup world. And I realized that a lot of, and these were, I'm based in Dubai, and a lot of these girls were Emirati. And I realized a lot of them actually lack one very simple thing, which is role models. Now, this has been about, I'm talking 8-10 years ago, so things have improved drastically since that, but we still have a long way to go. Most of the girls that I met said, yeah, but, you know, we're going to do all this, but then, you know, where will we end up? There are not that many ministers. There aren't any ministers. At that time, there weren't. There are women. They're not. We don't see so many companies that have women CEOs. So what's the point? Like, you know, why should we do this? So I understood at that point that having role models and proactively promoting role models is a very important aspect of embedding diversification. I think the other thing that you can do in the workplace, and I think if you have the privilege of being more senior or more sort of advanced in your career, you really have a good position to do this, which is when you're sitting, leading a meeting or in a room where you can see that the voice share in the room is not balanced, is to encourage the especially younger women to speak up and discourage people who try to speak over them, and because that happens a lot in real life situations. So I think that's another proactive approach you can take. And finally, I think I started Alif less than a year ago. And I have a team that when everybody joins will be more mixed, but so far it has been all women, and it wasn't deliberate, and people don't believe me when I say this. But I think when you get CVs, when you're recruiting, when you're getting profiles, if you just step back a little bit and look at it and see, well, I'm getting 100%, let's say, I don't know, Lebanese men for this job, right? Or I'm getting 100%, if you're recruiting for CEOs, which we do a lot as private equity, I'm getting 100% Western names. It's not just about women. You have to take take a step back and see that actually there is a problem with this recruitment process, and try to get more CVs and get more profiles in, and proactively consider diversity in your hiring process. Now, sometimes there's a reason. Some countries have a good ecosystem for a specific industry or have good education systems, so there may be reasons, but the reality is that it is our responsibility in making hiring and promoting and all of those decisions to make sure that we're not already looking at a biased funnel which we're filtering from.
Absolutely. I mean, it starts with women supporting women and women encouraging their counterparts to embark on new roles and to pursue roles that are perhaps traditionally male-dominated. Ms. Elisa, with efforts and initiatives in investing in entrepreneurship and media, can you tell us more about how your platform has played a role in empowering women in this region and the lessons you've learned along the way and why you've pivoted this way?
Absolutely. Thank you again for having me. I'm so excited to be here and surrounded by such an incredible group of women, some of whom I've known for a few years. So it's just so beautiful to have a bit of a reunion. And this is exactly why Womena made its pivot. So in the early days, we've been around for almost 10 years now, and Womena started out as an initiative that was aimed at increasing financial literacy and facilitating investment from women. So we were educating women on investing, and then basically made the entire process so smooth and seamless that women could invest into startups for as little as 5 or 10K. And we did this initiative for about 4 years. We focused on educating women, facilitating investment. The startups themselves didn't have to be female-led, but naturally, because we had more female investors, they invested in a 50-50 split of female-founded companies and male-founded companies. And that was really interesting for us to kind of see at the end of the 4 years. But we shifted then to working with the startups directly. And we saw, as Sophie so rightly said, there was a huge gap in femtech or interest in femtech, even though women are 50% of the population. The idea that any technology could focus on them or that was developed by women for women wasn't necessarily something that people were supporting at the time, or the male-dominated investment space couldn't understand or see the value in. So we decided to essentially use our platform to give legitimacy to a lot of businesses that were being dismissed. And we started an accelerator called Momentum in 2018 that hosted 10 female-led startups from across the Middle East. And we took them to Germany for 2 weeks and then to Dubai for 2 weeks to redesign their businesses and film the whole thing for social media. Now, that this is where the lessons learned and the question of the pivot. So as exciting as an initiative it was to work with startups directly and to work with women investors, what we noticed from creating this docuseries, this web series of Momentum Online, was that it was actually giving us much more of an impact than the accelerator itself. So throughout the efforts of the accelerator, we were working with startups, and yes, we were helping those startups grow in their client base and grow in exposure and raise funds. But the stories of the women that we were telling reached millions. the viewership for the first season of Momentum for the first 10 episodes was over 5 million. And for us, that told us that there was such a desire to see an alternative image of a female founder. And so Womena ended up pivoting to create, as Hoda also addressed, the desperate need for role models, not just in Emirati culture, across the GCC, across the Middle East, and around the world, to see women, people of color, that are succeeding at unconventional career choices and life paths. And so we were getting feedback and emails and DMs from people outside of this culture, and men as well, that were just so inspired by the content that we made. We even were receiving letters of young girls who had convinced their families to allow them to go study at MIT, for example, because they were able to show them successful female tech founders that were in our program. And this is where the pivot happened, because we saw that as an impact-driven business, the biggest impact we could have was storytelling, was highlighting the stories that very much already exist. We don't have to construct these stories, and they don't have to be fictionalized. They are very much real, incredible women like we have on this panel. And it's just about giving them a platform and not necessarily needing to dictate what they say. We're really on a mission at Womena now to not only amplify the voices of the women that we feature, but actually expand the choices that women in the region see in front of them for their life. We want them to be empowered to make alternative choices. That's their own choices, and hoping that the role models that we show them can open the doorway and give them a bit more confidence to take that first step in an alternative direction.
It's really wonderful, wonderful work you're doing. Ms. Lujena, what game-changing initiatives and policies have really been put forth by MHD to promote a diverse workforce, and how has it impacted your business operations?
Well, here, Amina, I would like to also highlight is that in our company, since the time of my late father, we have always treated our staff as one big family. I mean, this is the motive we have been trained to deal with when it comes to our staff. Of course, I mean, it doesn't mean that, because we are one family, I mean, we follow the protocol. We appoint whoever is actually fits the bill, as they say, who can perform, who's ambitious. It's either a man or a woman. But one thing we also want to highlight here is at MHD, we follow Vision 2040. I mean, we are very clear in Vision 2040, and one of the main highlights in the vision is empowering women. So at our organization, we are really very, very much into training, into updating the staff, so that, we are always there when it comes to anything new or any change around us globally or in the nation. So we at MHD, we do a bit of balance. I mean, yes, we are one family. We are there for you, anything you need. But at the end of the day, we are in a business. You have to be a performer, and you need to go with the wind.
It's wonderful to work at an organization where you know that your success is based on merit. So that's wonderful. Ms. Sophie, you are the brains behind the 2022 Female Angels movement. How is this movement engaging and educating and encouraging women to become angel investors in early stage startups in MENA?
So this movement was very much born out of a personal frustration at the back end of last year with trying to find women to invest in Navita as part of our seed round. We had raised our pre-seed with 11 angel investors in total, whom only 2 were women. And we knew we wanted more women on our cap table, but we also knew that we had scoured all of the public lists out there. I had personally probably messaged about 200 people on LinkedIn who I thought looked like they could be good angel investors. And it was a lot of work. And I've been speaking to a lot of other founders who were very discouraged because they were facing the same kind of difficulties, finding people who could really relate to what they were building, most of which was targeted at women. So the 2022 Female Angels movement was born of a frustration with the amount of investment that was going into female-founded companies. But actually today, it's less about that. and more about empowering women in the region, in the MENA region, to become angel investors and to start putting their money to work. We know that there are a whole lot of stats around the financial discrepancies between men and women. For example, most women end their careers with 40% less in their pension. Most women don't have conversations as standard over coffee about their investment portfolios, about the stocks, the bonds, the companies, the real estate, whatever it is that they've invested in. We want to change that. So the mission of the 2022 Female Angels Movement initially was exclusively to identify and publicly list 2,022 female angel investors for MENA by the end of the year. We formed a steering committee of about 30 people who are now working to that mission and sort of doing a mixture of events, comms, and then event bombing, where they rock up and they're angels invest, angels do deals, angels make noise t-shirts, and try and start a lot of conversations with people about why women should be investing more. The movement has actually grown arms and legs. So by the end of the year, it will almost certainly be a formalized organization that starts to work in a very structured way to increase investments made by women, which again, as Alyssa mentioned, and Alyssa, it's so interesting hearing how Womena started that, which should then result in more money being invested into female-founded and female-oriented companies as well.
The reality is that women have a much harder time securing funding, as we all know from the official data. So if you can get female angel investors to invest in women-led companies, then that's half the battle already won, right? Ms. Basma, what other initiatives have you taken to really support and raise awareness and tackle various forms of mental health concerns, from depression, anxiety, PTSD, from a variety of ailments?
So we've done a lot of, obviously a lot of talks, but again, the talks that we do are very different. We actually get people engaged a lot in the talks, and we get them also to give us their ideas. We used a lot of things to do with things that we see around us, for example, art, music, all of these things, and we enhance mental health in it. We know, as any organization or any company or anybody who wants to start something, if they feel that they don't have self-esteem, and I call that a superpower, or they don't have that kind of thing that they want to challenge themselves, they will not succeed. So we kept on doing all these awareness campaigns, all these talks, how to build the self-esteem, how to have good communication skills, how to know how to work with others. Some people only know how to work alone, and that's something you won't succeed in. You need to learn how to work in a team. A lot of companies will come to us and ask us to help their employees do team building and all of that. And we would always go to the top and say, well, it has to start from the top to the bottom and not the other way around. So we do all these kind of ideas that will actually, where we hear what's going on with the people who are working in these companies and what's happening with them. When we hear about diversity, when we hear about gender, we always bring it back to talking about it's nothing to do with if you're a male or a female, it's to do with how you think and how you work. And that's something that kind of makes people stop in their shoes a bit and think, oh, wait a minute, yes, in the end, it's about you being a human and you having specific skills that make you succeed. So reminding people about these skills and reminding them with the most easiest thing. We had a campaign called Be Kind, which a lot of people would be like, that's so obvious. I mean, we're all kind and we're all doing good, but that's not true. We've forgotten these things, and these elements are probably the things that we remembered when COVID hit us. Being together, having gratitude, being kind, asking for help. Having helplines also something we enhanced a lot, where we hear problems from people and help them get over it. And also we started doing all these databases where we would actually think, okay, this is where we need to do, this is what we need to change. Besides that, I personally worked a lot with camps and helping them through mental health. A lot of people always think that the camps are only a place where people should give money to, but also we need to think about their mental health for them afterwards. How will they deal? A lot of times today we've heard about storytelling, we've heard about working together, we've heard about challenges. I strongly, strongly believe in storytelling, and what we're doing today is part of storytelling. And as women, I think we're the best in doing that. So all of these, and also getting information from other countries, visiting a lot of countries and seeing what they do for mental health, and also sharing, the ideas that we've done as well. It's something that we've been always doing, and we hope that we continue doing it. Diversity in the workplace. In my clinic, for example, a lot of people will ask, where are you all from? And we're from totally different countries because we want to learn from each other. So when people see this, then they think, oh, maybe that's a good idea. We don't need to only be, you know, for example, all of us from Oman. We need to learn from each other. So I think my take is a bit different because we're more into the humanistic kind of thing, into the feelings, into the reflecting. And honestly, to be a very successful businesswoman or to do a startup, you need to have that part, which is way more important than anything. And that's that mental health stability.
And you're not the first person to mention storytelling on this panel, as it just helps women and people and humans relate to one another. Ms. Arij, as an influential and inspiring woman business leader, could you share with us your learnings that have really been crucial to you becoming a successful?
For me, I can just summarize what are the key learnings for me. For me, I feel that, or I believe that, you know, passion. I started the passion because I feel passion is very important. Any person who wants to succeed and be a successful woman, she should have a passion, because the passion leads her one day where she will be. So passion is one. Second thing, you should have a mentor. And as my sister Lujena said, because for me, my late father was my mentor who guided me, and he has, I mean, today where I am, definitely with his mentoring, and he mentored me to reach where I'm today. Hard work, you should be, you know, working hard. Determination, you should not give up easily. Other networking, I feel networking is very important also, because by networking you just interact with ladies, and you know, I mean, what things which you need to add to be like them, and what you are lacking. And when you speak to people, you should listen to them, because everything, I mean, a person who's like today with the panel, the ladies which you are, then definitely each of them, they have reached this position by something they have done. So it's good, you know, by meeting them, networking with them, you know, we can learn from them.
Absolutely.
So these are,
we can all learn from one another. Yes, thank you. Ms. Huda, could you elaborate on how Aleph Capital really enables women entrepreneurs as well as small business owners to achieve their full potential and to be successful in today's dynamic and digital business ecosystem?
Yeah, and maybe just a quick brief on what Aleph does to put the question in context. So I established Aleph as a private equity firm. It's one of the few, not just regionally, but globally, private equity firms established by a woman. Senior leadership in private equity globally is sub 10%. So female founders is even less than that. I don't actually have the number. And so I did this for two reasons. One, for a business reason. I wanted to create a leading asset manager based out of this region. For our first fund, we're focusing on mid-sized businesses that are either in need of or embarking on a digital transformation journey and need support. We feel that tech startups and larger companies are sort of well served, but the mid-market suffers, and there's a lot of business. They represent a big part of the economy. And so what we do is empower those businesses and mentor the founders, the management, support them in their growth, not just by funding that growth, but linking them. SME businesses are not as easily visible to people. They don't have as easy an access as others do to networking opportunities, which Arij rightly said is extremely important for the growth of businesses and for realizing success. So we very much focus on bringing our networks to those businesses, and in particular learning. Because one of the things I've seen, and I've sat on boards of businesses that have $3-4 billion in revenue, is that people are not good at asking questions. I've sat on boards, I've sat on executive committees where we get, people come to us with proposals, particularly on the IT side, and everybody kind of looks away and says, yes, approved. And Lujena will understand. Most of the people sitting on those positions, including myself, don't necessarily know what they're approving when it comes to specialized areas like digital transformation. So we embed a culture of asking questions and finding out who the expert is and bringing them to the to your mentorship arena, to your board, to your executive team to make the right decisions. And we feel that's the best way to support businesses. Segueing that into how we support women in particular in that context, I think I find that because of history and because of the historically lower participation of women, particularly in my sector of finance and investments, and I've been very involved in oil and gas, which is another one that suffers from this, it's important to educate them about these networking, learning, and reaching out. Reaching out requires a level of confidence that, say, the Basma talked about. It requires a degree of maturity that you need to learn. So we support them by telling them this is actually, you see men doing this all the time, sort of brainstorming, talking at coffee about work, etc. And women don't do it. So bringing that culture in, I think, specifically supports women.
Thank you. Valid points there. Now, Ms. Elisa, as a women's rights advocate, how are you working towards tackling the issue of female inclusivity and gender inequality for Arab women?
There's a lot. My entire life revolves around this. My career and my personal efforts all revolve around this. It became my mission very much, and my purpose, I think. And the first thing is that, to be honest, just not shying away from certain terms or certain wording. So calling Womena a feminist media company was very important. Calling myself a feminist and a women's rights advocate and owning that, I think, was the first step that kind of, I think, surprised a lot of people in this space, because it's very easy to get into the conversation of, yes, empowering women and including women. But what we're really talking about is a system that needs to shift and change to actually be more equitable across genders and across ethnicities and across kind of all areas in our life. So the first thing that really was important was making Womena an umbrella organization that was first and foremost a feminist media company, but that allowed us to then explore and expand the efforts that we do. So every piece of content that we put out is a nuanced, substantial contribution of original content into the history of the state of women in the Middle East. Every single woman that we interview, every single face that we feature, and every time that I do an event like this, for example, and I'm honored and lucky enough to be on a panel, that advocacy and that outspokenness already kind of breaks down some barriers. Just seeing a group of women like us speaking openly, speaking freely, all was so diverse in lots of different industries, paving the way. These are the kind of role models that I saw I desperately needed growing up. They weren't even there visibly 10 years ago. I remember when we were first featured in Arabian Business, we were like the first women in the entire magazine, the only women in the magazine that week. And in 3 weeks, we were the first women to appear in it, like as not in ads. And it was so shocking to me, because that the women are there, the talent is there, they're successful, they're available, they're accessible, but the environment and the system itself is not necessarily involved or adapted to highlighting them. And so most of my work has to do with letting people know that, letting people not shy away from words, and making people aware of the amount of elements that get in the way of inclusion and things, for example, systemic issues that hold men back as well as women. And so a lot of the work that I do now, especially, can be formal with the Dubai Chamber, for example. I was appointed to the board of the Dubai Chamber of Digital Economy. And a lot of the work that I do with the Dubai Chamber, personally, I took it on as my responsibility and my role in this board room filled with very successful digital entrepreneurs. My role was to make sure that all of the efforts that we do are done through a gendered lens. And I think most of my efforts, once I speak with others, is for them to start perceiving the world through a gendered lens and to normalize all of the varieties of women and futures that they embody, so that people don't fear it, so that women don't fear a potential unknown future for themselves if they make a certain choice that's out of norm or that's a taboo. And for men not to fear the other, for men not to necessarily assume that all women look in a certain way or act a certain way. I'm Emirati. I don't look Emirati. I don't act traditionally Emirati, and I don't speak like a traditional Emirati. But I can tell you that I still am as Emirati as anybody else right now. And that in and of itself, that existing and that taking up space is quite powerful as advocacy. And I think that any young woman who wants to be an advocate for these issues needs to first and foremost just recognize that they are enough. And if they just own who they are, what they're doing, what they want in the world, and they're not afraid of, you know, terminologies like feminist or women empowerment, then they're also able to you know, desperately contribute to a much needed effort.
Remarkable.
Just by being themselves.
Absolutely. I mean, remarkably, women have always been in the background. We've always been there. We've always been working. It's about bringing them to the foreground and about us insisting that we are now in the foreground. Okay, with that, we end today's session. Thank you to all of our panelists for sharing your insightful views on your businesses and your industries with us. We really appreciate everyone's time, so a big thank you also to all of our viewers. Goodbye.